Welcome to Very Good Sports Podcast. It is a sudden edition after I was just sitting down, enjoying my Saturday evening, watching the Sacramento Kings blow another 18-point halftime lead. This time, the Washington Wizards after blowing an 18-point halftime lead to the Philadelphia 76ers last night. And it led me to thinking about their future. So, tweeted out to my good friend Justin Russo, who is on with us tonight. Justin, how you doing?
I'm all right, man. How you doing?
I am in a
That's a bad
state.
question, actually. That's a bad question, but yeah, I understand.
Yes, in a state of facing a grim reality of the Sacramento Kings.
I understand. We've all been there. As a Clipper fan for many years, I remember what it was like to basically just be right there and have like just wondering if you should go in a different direction.
Yeah, it's been a fun ride that's going to continue. I mean, look at the Kings. I mean, I'm not going to blame George Karl for this, but basically looking at their defense, 23rd in opponent's field goal percentage, ranked 28th in points allowed per game, giving up 105. Their fourth most turnovers, 15.9, 25th in turnovers forced, 12.1, and 29th in assist turnover ratio. And just on top of that, just to make things better, Darren Collison is out for the year, so it's been a great ride this year.
Well, the term roller coaster would actually be not as like it would not describe the season for you guys as well as it would for other teams. I think it's just been one of those seasons for Sacramento where it reminds me almost like a team's getting blown out in the first half, and the coach is like, please, let's just get us to halftime. Please just get to halftime. It's like where the Kings were like, please just get to the end of the season. We just need to get to the end of the season right now. It reminded me of a little bit of like, obviously not as drastic as Denver with Brian Shaw on the bench, and the players were chanting 1, 2, 3, 6 weeks because they just wanted to get the hell out of there. I mean, and Denver's turned it around because they no longer have Brian Shaw to look over them, or at least try to look over them. So, I mean, you just got to get to the finish line any which way possible.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Although the part that kind of makes it worse, besides the Michael Malone firing, and I'll avoid getting to that. Otherwise, it'll make things even worse. Is that when you look at their numbers, they're very similar to the Philadelphia 76ers, who are setting an all-time example of tanking, while the Kings have DeMarcus Cousins, George Karl as their coach, Ben McLemore, Rudy Gay. I just don't. It's frustrating.
Well, I guess you could just say one's in the East and the other's in the West. So, I mean, if you're poor in the West, it's more like you're solid to not as bad in the East. So, I mean, because I mean, the bottom of the East is so bad that if you're in the bottom of the West, it's not as bad as being in the bottom of the East. Like your team isn't looked at as unfavorably, I guess, so to speak. Like Boston, for instance, is one out of the Eastern Conference playoffs, at least the 8th seed, as their one loss out, and it's like in the West, I think they'd be behind Utah, I think it is, or something like that. So, yeah, like it's kind of like the conferences are not equal.
No.
You know, it's like Cleveland, I think, would be like the 6th seed or the 7th seed in the West, or maybe it's even the 8th seed. I haven't checked in like a couple days, but yeah, there's no parity in the conferences. The West is the Hunger Games, and the East is basically just two teams who are trying not to die, and then just wait until they meet each other in late May.
Well, there you go. There's a little bit of positive for the Kings. It could. I mean, we're in the toughest
It could be
conference.
worse. It
Could
could
be
be
worse.
worse.
Although
That's
I
what I
will
tell
say,
myself every day.
yeah, I will say for Philadelphia's sake, they do have a lot of draft picks.
They have a lot of draft picks. They have a lot of young players like Nerlens Noel, even Jeremy Grant. Jakar Sampson has shown some stuff at times to where you can probably be like probably like ninth man off the bench or so. I mean, Thomas Robinson, if they keep him, if he resigns there, could be a great energy big off the bench. Robert Covington's shown stuff. Was a Hollis Thompson, like Henry Sims. These got like they could be solid little bench pieces in the future, but obviously they're not guys that you want to have on the starting lineup 2 years from now. I mean, unless they take some rapid leap forward. I mean, like Jeremy Grant, for instance, when he came out of Syracuse, he couldn't shoot. Like he was horrible. Like him on jumpers last year was terrible at Syracuse, and like this year, Philadelphia's done wonders with him. I think he's. You know, I have it right here. if you want to give me one. Like I think he was shooting like 38% from three or something.
So basically, he
36.
was Jeremy Grant without the J.
Yeah, he was Jeremy Grant. Then he found the J. 36% from three, and he's Jeremy Grant now. It's interesting to hear stories of how Philadelphia has been like helping kids. Glenn Robinson III tweeted out like the first day he got to Philadelphia from Minnesota after Minnesota like waived him and Philadelphia picked him up. It was like Philadelphia has this facility to where and this like notion where they want every young guy to get better, so they work with them. It's not like, oh, you're young, so we'll get to you when we get to you, because we have veterans. It's in Philadelphia. It's like, no, we're going to work with you right now, and we have stuff we need to work with you on right now because you have to get better for the future for us. So it's almost like they're trying to actually help you rather than kind of like more or less help themselves. You know what I mean? Because when they realize that they help you, they'll help themselves too.
Well, to be fair, I mean, Philadelphia has nothing else to do, so they might as well help the young players.
And I have no problem with what Philadelphia does, as weird as it sounds. Like, there's some people, like, the anti-tanking people, like, Philadelphia's ruined basketball. They're not even, like, one of the two worst teams in basketball, I don't think, anymore. I think the Knicks and the Minnesota are worse. So it's like, you can't really, like, you can't hate on what Philadelphia is doing when you realize, yeah, they're trying to tank, but at the same time, they're still winning more than teams who are not trying to tank. Like the Lakers are not trying to tank, and they're almost as good as the Lakers are. So, I mean, yeah, and people could actually say, I mean, and this was the Lakers who had Kobe Bryant for like almost, what was it, 30 games or something? So it's like, but then again, there's the whole West argument, like the West tougher than the East. So, but Philadelphia, I like what Philadelphia is doing. I can't really hate on what they do. I mean, because you gotta remember they were stuck in like the 7-8 seed area for a while. It's like you never want to be there. Like that's the same place Atlanta was, and then Atlanta kind of got rid of like some pieces. They got Al Horford healthy, and now it's like they signed guys, like Paul Millsap and all these guys, and DeMarcus Carroll. They got Kyle Korver. It's like all of a sudden they got these guys who bought in, and now they're best team in the East and legitimately scary. You never want to be in the 7 to 8 area. Like you never want to be mediocre. If you're in the middle of the pack, you're doing it wrong. You always want to be up or down. You never want to be just hanging around.
Definitely, I mean, the whole anti-tanking thing and fixing lottery, I don't know if it'd be traditional, but I like sports where, if you want to tank to improve your team for the future, I'm cool with that. I don't want the draft lottery to be fixed where it's randomized. And I mean, it's randomized right now, but I don't want it further changed. I'm happy with where it is.
Like, you gotta remember, when people, like the people who hate tanking overlook the simple fact that, like, no team with the best odds to win the lottery has won the lottery since Orlando got Dwight Howard. Like, it's been since 2004. I mean, it's been 10 years. I mean, it's going on quite a ways. If you had the if you had the 8th or 9th best odds over the last decade, you picked first more than any of the. Let me rephrase that. If you had the 8th or 9th best odds in the last decade, you picked first overall more times than the teams who had the first, second, or third best odds combined. Wow. So it's like people hate on tanking because it makes the product bad, but like the teams are not getting rewarded. The lottery is functioning fine. It's doing its job. It's making it to where teams who are bad and trying to intentionally be bad don't get rewarded for being bad. The only time I had a problem with the lottery was Charlotte being legitimately the worst team ever and not getting the first pick, which was Anthony Davis.
Yeah, I mean, as a Sacramento fan who's dealt with the lottery year after year, we can definitely attest to the whole having high odds doesn't exactly lead to great results, as we've seen with them moving from 1 to 4 or 2 to 5. It's been very, very bad.
Well, what is it, like Minnesota? I think it was Minnesota. Like, Minnesota's never moved up in the lottery.
I don't think the Kings have either.
Is that what it is? I think it's the both of them. Then, like, yeah, because I remember it was like David Kahn or someone on the Timberwolves made an offhand comment where it's like, yeah, the lottery's working because we're terrible like every year and we never get moved up. We always move down. Like it's just the luck of the draw sometimes. Like no one would have a problem with the lottery if Cleveland didn't win 3 out of 4 years.
That's true.
Like everyone would be like, oh, the lottery's fine, but Cleveland won 3 out of 4 years, and it's like, oh, everyone's got a problem now. So.
Yeah, I think with the lottery, it was the Cleveland thing with the 3 and 4 years, and people that actually ended up disliking Dan Gilbert's kid, and then You had
Well,
Derrick
they
Rose
hated
staying
his
in
kid.
Chicago.
They hated his kid, man. Like I've never seen a kid hated more in my life.
Yeah.
Like I was on a Lakers podcast like a week ago, and it was almost like Dan Gilbert's the devil and his kid's the son of the devil. It was like it's like man, like they get everything to go. Like Gilbert sent out that letter about what was it, the Chris Paul trade or something like that. It's like ever since then everything's gone his way and people just hate it.
Yeah,
I
Dan
mean,
Gilbert and letters have a very great history.
I mean, it is what it is. I can't really get mad at him. I mean, I'd be pissed too. I mean, then again, that trade never made its way to the league office, so whatever.
Yeah. Speaking of the Kings, pretty much right now, I mean, I talked about this a few weeks ago of how, you know what, I'm ready for the Kings to just be out of the top 10 this year, just let Chicago keep the pick. That's no longer a thing. They're going to be in the top 10 this year. I mean, they're closing in on Orlando moving ahead of them. The Kings have moved to the fifth pick. So they're going to have a first round this year. I mean, and also they're going to have no second round pick. You could look back to draft night last year when they were offered 10th pick and 2 second rounders from Philadelphia to move back to from 8 to 10. They obviously declined that, went for Nick Stauskas. It hasn't worked out, although revisionist history, maybe things go out differently.
Yeah, that's one of the problems with always looking in the back. Like, unless you're one of those people, which I kind of am, and think because I wrote that article about like all the things I got wrong in the NBA draft over the last 10 years. And so, like, if you actually keep like notes of how many guys you were high on and not high on, like the only way you can do the hindsight thing is if you have that, you know. So, I mean, because it's easy to look back and be like, oh, I'm just picking a name out of the air, like Rudy Gobert, for instance. Oh, I was high on Rudy Gobert. Oh yeah, where'd you have him? Oh, I had him like 20th. Oh, where'd he go? Like 26th. Well, or 27th, I think is where he went. It was like, yeah, you might have been high on him, higher than he got picked, but you weren't that high on him. Where it's like, obviously I'm touting my horn here, but I'll give you a reason where I was wrong. I had Rudy Gobert 8th, and I have it actually written down. And it's like I had Rudy Gobert 8th, and you should have gone higher, but teams hate international big men because they look at them as young and weak and puny and can't handle NBA bodies. But like, of course, that's me touting myself. But hey, I did get wrong. I got wrong. I got Darko wrong. So, you know, a lot of people got Darko wrong. But yeah, so in the NBA draft, anytime you use hindsight, I mean, it's easy to say hindsight's 20/20, but a lot of the times hindsight, it's not just hindsight. It's also reality. Like, so the Stauskas pick wasn't a problem. It was a head scratcher at the time. And I think they had intentions of using McLemore and Stauskas together in the backcourt, and then they signed Collison after that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's like I think what they wanted to do was try to teach McLemore how to play more with the ball in his hands, and it was like, oh, if we get Stauskas, now we got another shooter to where we can space the floor and we can go really small. Because I think part of their issue was if we go small, like you can. And this is obviously after they signed Collison. You can go Collison, McLemore, Stauskas, Gay, Cousins, and you have Gay as a small ball 4 and stretch it more for Cousins. Obviously, you get killed on the glass, but I mean, you can get away with that line for minutes a night, you know. And I just don't think it ever worked out for them. I mean, Stauskas isn't a bad player. It's just a lot of guys have tough first years, and there's a lot of extenuating circumstances behind it. Anthony Bennett had a terrible first year. Now, while he hasn't been great his second year at all, I mean, he's been somewhat injured his second year, but his first year was really injured. He had, what was it, sleep apnea, and he had the shoulder issue, and I mean, like, they're still young, man. Like, I think that's where people get mistaken is like these guys who are coming out 19, 20 years old, they got to produce right away, and that's not the case. Like, you can give them some time. It's just our culture and society these days, everything's got to be now. It's everything now, 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 now. And if you don't produce now, there's a problem. Like Macklemore last year. I mean, I ragged on Macklemore last year. I didn't think he was worth the pick he got picked at, but you see the progression he's made. And, you know, I can admit when I'm wrong. He's played better than I thought he was. And what was it? Alec Burks was another guy I didn't like. And I ragged on the pick when Utah made it. And you look at his development. This is a guy who developed. Now he's a good player. You know what I mean? Guys work on things. Guys do get better. It's just sometimes it takes some time.
Absolutely. You know, you brought up a lot of great points. I mean, you admit your mistakes, and that's something that, I mean, if you look at, not dropping names, but ESPN's Chad Ford, who likes to move his rankings every few years or so to make them look a little bit better. So Credit to you because I mean, like you said, you admit your mistakes with Darko and stuff. Looking back at last year's draft, I mean, you saw Grantland. They did the insider piece inside the Kings draft room. Kings badly wanted to try and get Embiid. That didn't work out.
Yeah.
They explored moving up to 6 with Boston, and on their board they were also high on Aaron Gordon. They weren't able to land him. So it is revisionist history, although when I saw the video originally, I was disappointed because Kings wanted second round picks. You could have moved down to 10. You figure Philadelphia still takes the same guy. I mean, I think Charlotte was after them. Maybe they go Stauskas, but they likely go with the same guy. And let's see, you still have your choice. Kings like both Stauskas and Payton. You probably have either available there, and you get 2 second-rounders in that process as well. But it is revisionist history. You have to move on and just deal with what you have right now.
Yeah, anytime you get into the draft, it's like we could have taken so-and-so over whoever, or we should have traded back for this guy. Like, you always come to a certain point where it's like, you could have, but obviously you didn't. Like, because you could play that card with Minnesota where it's like they should have taken Steph Curry over Johnny Flynn. It's like, yeah, they obviously should have, and we all knew it at the time. But it's like, there's not much you can do, but you got to make the best of what you have. I mean, was it another Golden State incident was, I'm sorry to mention, your Kings trading back and acquiring the contract of John Salmons and then picking Jimmer Fredette 1 pick ahead of Klay Thompson. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. But hey, you got DeMarcus after the Minnesota Timberwolves passed on, or they passed on him for, what was it, Wesley Johnson. Yeah, so I mean, I like to think things even themselves out for teams. And like in the case of Minnesota, it evened itself out because they got Wiggins. Like they got Wiggins from Cleveland for literally nothing because they weren't going to keep Kevin Love. Cleveland was bidding against themselves. Like Golden State was not going to trade Klay Thompson. I remember at the time I said they shouldn't trade Klay Thompson because the second they trade Klay Thompson, there goes Steph Curry's basically like the only guy next to Steph Curry who can be successful and draw defenders, and keep defenders honest because you can't double off Klay Thompson. Like if you're running a 1-2 pick and roll, you can't hedge and trap off Klay Thompson because once the ball gets split and to Thompson, you're screwed. So it's like, yeah, and I just think that a lot of teams outthink themselves. I think that's what happens. I think in the war room, I think because of the time, like because we see the draft and we think, 10 minutes is a long time. You should be able to come to a decision in 10 minutes. 10 minutes is not a long time. Like, there's not much you can do to make a decision in 10 minutes that involves literally the future of your franchise.
I mean, that's absolutely true, because, I mean, you think about 10 minutes, I mean, even doing a podcast, there's no pressure on it, but still, 10 minutes, 20 minutes go by in an instant.
Like that, yeah.
And these aren't high-leverage situations we're having either.
No, this is fun. And for them, it's fun, but it's also like, holy shit, if we don't get the guy we need, we're screwed. And that's a problem. I think people overlook and say, how did you pass on so-and-so? Like, how did Kawhi Leonard fall to 15? Well, teams probably didn't think he was worth the crap, and teams probably had higher needs, and they probably outthought themselves, and the time limit ran out on them, and they were just like, oh, crap. I mean, there's so many variables and factors that go into a guy getting picked that it's not just one thing. Like, even the Grantland piece on the Kings selecting Nick Stauskas, it's more than they showed. Like, if that's all it was for the Kings, that'd be a problem. But it's more than they showed. It's like when ESPN and TNT do the little the audio tracks and it shows the coach and the talking to his players. And it's the same thing every time from every coach. Like, you got to play harder. You got to run back on defense. It's the same boring diatribe every time from every coach because they can't show you the X's and O's. They can't show you because that's giving away stuff that teams don't want people to give away. And that's probably what happened with the Kings and the Grantland thing was the Kings told them, okay, well, we're going to let this go, but you can't show this.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just looking back at the Kings thing, the one issue I always had, I mean, just moving on past the draft selection stuff, the one issue I had, and this is perception, obviously said they could have taken stuff out, is when the Kings were on the clock, it looked like Vivek Ranadive was more steering that room. And I've never been a fan of an owner unless he's just a super basketball genius. But even then, I prefer that, he has a voice, but I want the GM making that call.
Yeah, I think there should be. Okay, this is this is actually something that I've learned over the years in sports. You never want the coach and the GM to be the same guy, and you never want the GM and the owner to have the same opinion. Because if you never have anybody who disagrees with each other, then you don't have anything. Because it's almost like it's a marriage, it's a relationship. You should have disagreements, but you should be able to talk them out.
Yeah.
And if you can't ever come to a disagreement, basically, and then work it together to get over the disagreement, you're pretty much screwed and you're set up for failure. I like Vivek. And this is partially just because, and it's a lot actually, because of his Real Sports story on HBO, of like how he came to the country and like how he made his living and all this stuff. And you realize that's a wildly intelligent guy. Like that's one of the most intelligent owners in the NBA. Like just from a sheer like intelligence standpoint, not basketball, but just intelligence. And it's like, it's almost like our culture is so driven to kind of make fun of people who are different that, and it's nothing to do with his race or ethnicity or anything like, or the way he talks or anything like that. It has to do with the fact that like he's an outsider. Like he came in and people made fun of him because it's like, oh, he coached a girls' basketball team, so he thinks he knows everything. It's like that's not why he thinks he knows everything. He thinks he knows everything because he's a genius. Like he reminds me of Sheldon on Big Bang Theory. Like he's so smart. He thinks he's not smarter than everybody else, but like there's the disconnect between what he sees and how he's able to relay what he sees. So I think the Kings are fine. I just think you can't make a call on ownership like 2 years into it because there's so many moving parts. Like he came in and Rudy Gay was already there, right? No, they traded for him after.
They acquired him, yeah.
Yeah, they traded for him after. And it's like I think he was so pressured to just win now. Like he wanted to bring a winner right away, and I think that was the problem. Was he didn't have the patience, and it like has nothing to do with foresight. It's just the patience of it. Like I just think that he rushed into something that I don't think he was prepared for, at least on that front. And it's okay for him to have the room, especially on draft night. I mean, people forget that is his team. He writes the checks. I mean, the owner should have some say over over personnel decisions, but there should be a disconnect between the owner and the GM where the GM's able to tell him basically no.
Yeah.
And like some discourse to get over the hump.
Yeah, and I think you know it perfectly. I mean, just with Vivek, I mean, I think this is still a learning experience for him. I think he's a very smart. I mean, just his story, it proves he's a very smart man. He's learning the NBA game more. I think we're seeing him learn. I think he's made mistakes along the way. Obviously, I won't count the dust just because that's still early. But I mean, and
even the McLemore pick, that's still early too.
Oh, still very early. But I mean, what we've seen is, he had the pressure that you need to win games. Last year was kind of a transition, get the old pieces out, bring new pieces in. This year they put the focus on winning. They said that wins and losses matter. Then they fired Michael Malone, and Ty Corbin was in there. And I think it just got so heckled and just the pressure and everything. It just boiled over and things didn't work out well. But now I think as time goes on, he's going to see the light more and figure out the game and what to do for the future.
Yeah, I think the Ty Corbin move was actually so bad that I don't think it could actually be quantified. Not for the simple fact that he coached the team. I think it's more for the fact that like they brought him in and he got the reins when he shouldn't have, because like it was almost like one of those things where it's like, okay, we have him, let's use him. It's like that's not what should happen. And I think that's part of the issue was Corbin in Utah was very bad. And I think he's almost one of those old school guys where it's like not it's my way or the highway, but more of like traditional set where it's like, okay, this is how we're gonna do it, this is how we're gonna run it, and there's no compromise. And I hate saying this because it's like I'm taking shots at him. I just view him as an idiot. Like, and I know that sounds mean. I probably shouldn't say that, but I do just view him as like a guy who I don't think he understands the game, but I don't think he knows how to relay it to his guys. Like, I don't think there's a disconnect between what he sees and what's going on, if that actually makes any sense. And I think the Carl thing should work out. At least I hope it does for them. But there are some issues with it. I think George wants his style, his way now, and it's going to take time. It's not going to be like they go through the offseason and that's it. It's going to be a gradual thing over the next, 18, 24 months.
And that brings us to, tonight and the start of the podcast is basically this is going to be a process. You look at the roster right now. Assets-wise, they have Cousins, who's the biggest one. They have Gay. They have McLemore. They have Darren Collison, who had a very good season, though he's injured and will be out for the year, and they have the draft pick. Outside of that, you're looking at Landry, Jason Thompson, who I know a lot of fans hate, but he has a role, and he may be paid a lot of money, but the contract will be movable next year. You have Stauskas, who you can't give up on. You have Ray McCallum, who likely is going to be a backup point guard, but he's still growing in the game.
And you can't give him up because he's cheap.
Yeah.
See, that's a problem a lot of teams have now. Like, these cheap talent. It's almost like the NFL, where if you can get guys in this, for the NFL, for instance, if you get guys in this 3rd and 4th and 5th and 6th and 7th rounds, and they turn out to be good players, but they're locked into those cheap deals, it creates such a great flexibility plan for you going forward. Where it's like in the NBA, look at Chandler Parsons, okay? It's like Chandler Parsons is a 2nd-round pick, and even DeAndre Jordan, right? Like, they're 2nd-round picks. They're being paid chump change, like $560,000 a year, or whatever the hell it was at the time. And it's like they're being paid basically pittance for great production, and the team is basically getting so much more production for the dollar than they would from, say, for instance, okay, like Rudy Gay, paying him $19 million a year. He's not a $19 million a year player. Now next year it's 12.4, but it's like he's not worth 19.3. But next year it goes down $7 million, so it's okay. But it's like the production he's doing now is not $19 million worth. Where it's like Ray McCallum for $1 million is worth it. And this idea that I like the idea of teams buying 2nd-round picks because it's cost effective. Like even late 1st-round picks, they're cost effective because if you nail somebody, you're great, you're golden, because that's somebody who's locked in for such a cheap sum of money. And I liken it almost to the Russell Wilson factor, where it's like he got picked in the 3rd round. He's so cheap he allowed the Seahawks to go get guys they shouldn't have been able to get if they picked him in the 1st round. So, it does wonders. Like paying Carl Landry $6.5 million is not worth it, but paying Ray McCallum almost $1 million is worth it. Paying Ramon Sessions at the time $2 million was worth it. It's like, and you can get all these guys. Like for instance, the Philadelphia Eagles. They shipped out LaShawn McCoy, right? He was due $11 million this year as a cap hit. The guys they brought in, which was DeMarco Murray, Ryan Matthews, Kiko Alonso, and somebody else, I think totaled $10.5 million for a cap hit for that next year. So you got rid of one guy and you got 3 who are going to easily replace him and do other things. It's all cost. It's all you got to find a balance between what you're paying and what you're getting. And that's the problem this day in the NBA. And with the cap inflation coming up, obviously that goes out the window a little bit, but it's almost like a money ball. You got to find the talent that's going to be productive for the least amount of money.
Definitely. You mentioned acquiring 2nd-round picks. That's one issue the Kings have going forward is they don't really have any 2nd-round picks. They use them to trade the jump salary and stuff. So now they're left without them going forward. They have the 1st-round pick. But besides that, you're going to have to end up buying 2nd-round picks or trading for some, which begs the ultimate question about DeMarcus Cousins. And you're looking at the team. The bench needs a lot of work. Power forward needs work. Rudy Gay's going to make less. He's fine. Point guard, you might be fine with Darren Collison. You probably will. Shooting guard, Ben McLemore slowly improves. Nick Stauskas should take a jump next year. But this team needs a lot of help, and is the answer to trade DeMarcus Cousins for that help when you could acquire potentially 3 first-round draft picks?
Yeah, I'll answer that in a second. But the Clippers are also in the same boat as the Kings with 2nd-round picks. I'm looking at it right now. The Clippers don't have a 2nd-round pick until, I guess they might have one next year if the protection falls in line. But it's like they don't have a protection. They don't have their own 2nd-round pick until 2019. That's a long time. And it's like you look at the Kings. It's like. But going to your point though, it's like, yeah, moving Cousins makes sense if you're getting cost-effective ways to do it. Just getting picks works, because the cap holes on the picks alone are worth it. Shipping Cousins out for like I don't even know. Okay, to Boston, right? Like you're shipping him to Boston for their first-round pick this year. Maybe the Clippers' first-round pick this year, but let's say no. So Boston's first this year. Brooklyn's first-round pick next year, and what was the Dallas pick? Yeah, the Dallas pick. So it's like say they give you those 3 picks, but it's like okay, but you have to take Gerald Wallace, and we'll give you the Clippers pick too. No, you don't do that. Because you don't need a $10 million salary. You know, like, cutting salary needs to happen for a team to rebuild. I mean, Philadelphia took on salary and got picks out of it, but they could because, you know, that's how they were doing it. But ideally, you don't want to take on salary unless you know you're not going to compete or at least be viable for a couple-year stretch. And the Kings right now, they're not viable now, but at least they have something in Cousins that can make them viable. The issue is that there's nothing to say that their team improves because sometimes you just need to get rid of somebody and just get what you can and move on. And it's nothing really against Cousins, a great player, probably the second or third best center in basketball behind Marc Gasol being the first the best center in basketball. But he's going to be 25. He's got 3 more years left on his deal. It's not like it's a terrible deal either. I mean, what is it? 15.8 million, 17 million, 18 million. Cap explodes after next year, man. I mean, if you're telling me, hey, guess what? You have to pay DeMarcus Cousins $35 million over the next 2 years. Oh, and there's an inflated cap. Are you going to do that? Yeah, I'm going to do that. Like, it's not even a question. I just think that they're in a situation where you cannot like the story of the night should just be don't outthink yourselves. If a team calls you and asks about Cousins and you say no, he's not available, you can't do that. You got to listen because maybe there's a team out there that's willing to give up multiple first-round picks for him, and maybe a young guy. You never know. You know, I mean, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, absolutely. You know, I'll give a shout out to Kingsforum.net. I mean, obviously they've done a lot of support on the podcast, and opposite side of Kings fans, one thing they brought up is with DeMarcus Cousins. Why are you trading the guy who isn't hurting the team? But it's not that DeMarcus Cousins isn't hurting the team. It's that looking at the team and overall, you have to look at what's best for the team and what can help them the most going forward. And that means trading DeMarcus Cousins. Maybe you get 3 first-round picks. Maybe if a team's desperate enough, you get 4 first-round picks. And those 4 first-round picks, the cap savings you have to use in free agency to add more pieces, that's best for your team going forward.
Yeah, there comes a point in time where just keeping a guy for the sake of keeping him the guy because he's the best player on your team doesn't really work. For instance, Clippers, okay? It's almost like the Gordon and Griffin situation, right? Where it's like, okay, we can get this guy, but do we really want to give up Eric Gordon? Like, one of the best young 2 guards in the game. Thank God they had an asset like the Minnesota first-round pick the next year that they could give up for Chris Paul, you know? So it's like, you know, they had that asset. But it's like you need to find teams that have something that actually helps you. And it's not about, like, this guy's hurting the team, so we have to get rid of him. Or, you know, he's not hurting the team, so we shouldn't get rid of him. That's not the way it works. The way it works is basically the end game is the big deal. And if you can't see the end game because you're so fixated on one guy, then there is no end game. You're basically just you're a hamster on a wheel inside of a cage. You're just going to keep spinning and spinning and spinning, and you're going nowhere. I mean, you know, I keep bringing him up, but I'm a Clipper fan. I've seen it. You know, I've seen what it looks like to run real fast and go nowhere. And the Kings, Cousins, like I said, great player. It's just if a team's willing to give you something for him, you got to look into it. There's no downside. You know, there's no downside to the Boston deal. Like, what's the downside of the Boston deal? You shed $17 million off your books, and you get 3 first-round picks that you can use on anybody when the draft rolls around. And it clears up some cap space this year to go after somebody that I'm trying to think of a guy like Chris Middleton or something. Obviously, you don't need a 2-guard, but you can try to ship off Rudy Gay for a second-round pick or something from any team looking for any contending team looking for a small forward who can score. You know, I mean, for God's sake, Jeff Green got traded. You know, you can find a taker for Rudy Gay now, even though, like, especially because he can be on a cheaper deal.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned the cap. Like, let's say you trade DeMarcus Cousins, you trade Rudy Gay. You're looking at like 40 million cap space potentially, and that's a lot of money to go out in free agency this year and free agency next year and make moves to help your team for the future.
Like, if a team trades for DeMarcus Cousins this offseason, if I'm the Kings, I make sure that whoever takes him takes on either Carl Landry or Jason Thompson.
It's a must.
Yeah, like you can't keep them for like you can't just keep them there. If I were them, I would try to move Carl Landry because I just don't see what he does. I feel like Carl Landry was that panic signing that a team did just because they needed somebody, and I hate those signings. They very often don't work out. Landry has redeeming qualities, but not on a team like that. Like the problem with Sacramento is they just threw players together and tried to hope they worked. And they did. Early in the season, they did. Like, I was talking about it with Mark Travis the other day. It was, like, the Kings are on this list, and it makes no sense, where it's like, among lineups that have played at least 100 minutes this year, the Kings are, like, 7th or 8th. One of their lineups is 7th or 8th in defensive rating. And it's their starting lineup from the beginning of the year. It's Collison, McLemore, Gay, Thompson, Cousins, right? It's like their defensive rating was like 94. And you're like, holy crap, like this team was playing defense. But it's like, yeah, then people got injured and people couldn't stay healthy and, all this turmoil happened and it didn't stay together. And personally, I would trade Carl Landry. Like, if I'm the Kings, I do one of two things. I either keep the team as it is and just give them an offseason to gel together, or I just go in the offseason and say, everyone's available, best offer. And whoever wants somebody gets them. I would look at Cousins almost like you don't have to trade him, but if the great offer comes, you can. Obviously, publicly, you don't say you're trading him because that's counterproductive. Because if everyone goes, oh, crap, they're trading DeMarcus Cousins, we can get him for pennies on the dollar. No. Basically just deny. You do that thing every NFL GM does. They deny when someone's getting traded.
Well, I'll say this for the Kings leaking things. I mean, we saw during the George Karl thing, they're not exactly the best at hiding things, but you can't let that get out.
No, the second something gets out, it's over. And that's the problem in this day and age, the social media age. Because you have Woj out there tweeting Woj bombs.
Technical issues?
Can you hear me? Hello? Hello? I think we lost Matt. So I'm going to keep talking. So in this day and age with the Woj bomb. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
can you hear me?
You're back now.
Oh, that was weird because you froze on my screen.
Oh, you did? All right. So it was on mine.
So, no, it's all right. I said, well, since I guess we lost Matt, I'll just keep talking then. No, but this, I don't know what the last thing you heard, but this day and age, the social media age with the Woj bombs and all this stuff, it's like, it's hard to keep things under wraps. There was that story where it was like, this player was walking into the office, and the second the player walked out, I guess Wojnarowski tweeted that the player had come to terms, and the guy's like, how the hell did he even know? And it's like, that's my problem with this day and age. Like, there's so many insiders that it's a problem. Sometimes things need to be kept behind closed doors.
Yeah. And the other issue with it is, I mean, looking at the George Karl saga, it was leaked that Cousins was the reason it was taking so long, and that infuriated Cousins to the point where even in interviews he was kind of hostile. And this is the same Kings organization, so if you're looking at trading DeMarcus Cousins, it's not a guarantee that that rumor doesn't get out.
Yeah, I feel like Cousins is the fall guy just because it's Cousins.
Yeah.
I mean, referees don't like him. Like it's kind of funny how Chris Paul and DeMarcus Cousins don't like each other because they're the same guy.
Yeah.
Like, nobody likes them. And the referees hate them. Everyone complains about how they play. It's like, but they're the same guy. Like, if Cousins and Paul were on the same team, they'd be best friends because they would have that everyone hates us attitude. And it's kind of funny as an outsider, like looking at Cousins, but going, I know what that's like because I have that guy on my team. And I feel like Cousins just gets so much crap thrown at him just because it is Cousins. Like, if something goes wrong, blame Boogie. It's his problem. Like that's not right. The guy's not even 25 yet, and we treat him like he's supposed to be leading the team to the playoffs and all this stuff. Like the same crap that got used against like Kevin Love a little bit. Like the same crap that got used against him. It was like he should be better than he is. He should be leading them to the playoffs. It's like, have you seen the West? Because the West isn't easy. For Kevin Love to get to the playoffs, he had to go East.
Yeah.
And that's what Cousins gonna have to do, I think.
Well, another problem I have with it is the whole social media social media thing. Where basically, I mean, you'll even today you'll still see people saying, "Well, DeMarcus Cousins is a thug. He gets in trouble." Yeah, I think it was Clay Travis who said 5 years ago, "I guarantee DeMarcus Cousins will be arrested." But if you look into Cousins, the person, he is one of the nicest people out there. He does an excellent charity work in the city of Sacramento. Has never had legal trouble since forever, basically. I mean, he is one of the true nice guys in the NBA, but the on-court reputation just kills him.
I wrote that article yesterday about Chris Paul. I don't know if you saw it. It was Everybody Hates Chris, and it was basically about how, like, reputation is everything. Like, how people view you, like, it basically just defines your career, and it sucks. Like, Chris Paul, okay, I know I keep bringing up the Clippers, and I kind of hate doing it, but it's like obviously the team I cover the most and I watch the most. I mean, obviously, I watch basketball every day. But it's like, okay, the Clippers, right? It's like Chris Paul has his reputation as a flopper. And if you talk to anybody on the internet, anybody on Twitter, anybody on any forum, Chris Paul is the biggest flopper in the league, right? Clippers are the biggest flopper in the league. They flopped more than any other team. Funny part is, and they whine more than anybody else. Funny part is, like, Oklahoma City, I think it was like last year or the year before, led the NBA in technical fouls. I think it was Westbrook or Durant led the NBA in technical fouls last year. Durant led the NBA in technical fouls last year. It's like, but they never get the same negative connotation towards them. Yeah. Like Russell Westbrook on was a Wednesday night, right? Like Wednesday night, Russell Westbrook heaving threes and flopping like a madman, and no one called him out on it. Like, everyone's like, oh, that's a flop, that's not a foul, but he shouldn't have gotten 3 free throws. Like, no crap, he shouldn't have gotten 3 free throws. But he kept trying to flop the rest of the game, and Joey Crawford didn't give him calls. But no one called him out on it. Steph Curry flops on a nightly basis. I've seen Steph Curry flop on jumpers where no one touched on. Who else did it? Kevin Durant's flopped on screens. Steph Curry, in the article I wrote, if you click on one of it, there's like a red link with his name on it. If you click it on the article, it's a video from the starters on NBA TV from last year, like March of last year, where this guy sent in a tweet to them. It was like, are you worried about Steph Curry's constant flopping on screens? And they went and they broke down the video. It was like Steph Curry was setting these cross screens in the paint on Diggs, right? Like, so he's screening the center, right? And every time, now Steph Curry is setting a moving screen. It's an offensive foul, but Steph Curry's hitting the ground every time and flopping and drawing a defensive foul and getting free throws because Golden State's in the bonus. But like no one calls them out on it because it's Steph Curry and he's so lovable and he's shooting threes. And I love Steph Curry, great player. I love Russell Westbrook, great player. Durant's an all-time great. LeBron's an all-time great. They all flop. I told someone on Twitter tonight, I said, it's kind of funny how all the great players in the NBA flop. It's the one thing they have in common. Paul flops, Griffin has flopped, Curry, Westbrook, Durant. They all flop. Marc Gasol, when he goes into the paint, he throws up the hook shots. He always bows out his elbow, his off elbow. He bows it out into the defender's chest and pushes him, and he always gets a call for it. And he kind of throws his head back and he throws the ball, and they're foul, like they're offensive fouls that they get away with, and everyone does them. Like all the great players, the reason what makes them so great is they get away with it. It makes them who they are, and I think Cousins hasn't gotten to the point where people recognize how great he is because he's in a smaller market, and because, it sounds crazy to say Sacramento, the capital of California, is a small market, but basketball-wise, it kind of is. It's not quite the Bay Area, so it sucks. Cousins is a legitimately great player. I'm sad it took him so long to make the All-Star team. He probably should have made it last year. But it is what it is.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where it's great to get star treatment. That's one of those things where past 2 years Sacramento fans have been saying, so when is this going to happen to Cousins? When is he going to get the star treatment fouls? But as of now, given Sacramento City, given Cousins' reputation, that's probably not going to happen for a while.
What was it? Not tonight, but the last game. What was it, Philly? You guys played Philly, right? Okay. Was that the game Lauren Holtkamp refed?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was mean mugging her the entire night, and I think it's because of the offensive foul she called on him against Tyson Chandler earlier this year. When Tyson Chandler flopped on him and drew like his 5th foul or something.
Yep. And I mean, you bring up that Tyson Chandler foul, and it's still stuck in my mind. I remember it.
Yeah, like she threw him an offensive foul for that. It's like, how's that an offensive foul? You know, and it's funny. It goes right with the whole Chris Paul, DeMarcus Cousins should be best friends because they both had a problem with the way that a rookie referee refereed a game.
Yeah. Now, one thing I did want to bring up, just back to Cousins trade thing, is because obviously the only scenario we're talking about trading him is if you get an amazing offer that, you know what, you're talking about 3 first-round picks, maybe 4 young pieces where you can build your team. Otherwise, you're not going to trade them. One thing I did want to suggest, I mean, they will have some cap room. Let's say you get a decent offer for Rudy Gay, that clears up your cap space more. Do you consider going after Chris Middleton?
I do. It's funny because I've been like touting Chris Middleton on Twitter like the last week, where it's like if any team with cap space is smart, they'll max RFA offer him. Like just offer him a max restricted free agent contract. He's worth it. It's funny because I don't think Milwaukee would match it. If you gave him a max contract offer, I don't see them matching it. I don't think they have the balls to. I think they're so married to Giannis and Jabari that's what it is. It's like, okay, we got these guys and that's it. Like Chris Middleton's a luxury to them at this point, not so much a necessity. Like think about it, he's gonna be 24, and he was a 2nd-round pick. Like that's another 2nd-round pick right there. Cheap guy, worth the money. Like he's gonna be 24 years old in August. Yeah, you sign that guy. Great defender, knockdown shooter. He's what Bradley Beal should be. Like that's the funny part. Like he's what Bradley Beal should be. Has 2 and 3. He can play the shooting guard, small forward. He has capabilities. Can somewhat handle the ball. He's the kind of guy you want to go with. And I think that's what they need to do.
Let me throw out 2 possible scenarios to you, because I think if Kings were to trade DeMarcus Cousins, I think Boston probably makes the most sense. Maybe Denver. But so I'll give you 2 scenarios. Scenario 1, you trade Rudy Gay. You give Chris Middleton a max offer. He signs. And you're going to have a top 10 pick. Maybe let's say it's 5th overall. What do you do with that pick in that scenario?
Where's the pick?
We'll put it at 5, where it would be assuming Orlando passes them in a few days.
Okay, so you trade Rudy Gay, you max Chris Middleton, right? You still have Cousins. That's tough because you'd like to get a power forward. But at the other thing, you could move Cousins to the 4. And actually, I think at that point, I'd just take Miles Turner. Because I think they could play, because Turner can hit a jumper. He can hit threes. He can hit face-up jumpers. You might as well just pick that guy. Because you can put him at the 4. The other is Willie Cauley-Stein. You put Willie Cauley-Stein there and basically just have him be the anchor. You can play them 4 or 5 and just, you can just play them 4 or 5 and just have Cauley-Stein play the 5 defensively, The other choice, I guess, is Frank Kaminsky. If you really wanted to get crazy, you could go Frank Kaminsky. And the reason I say that is because I don't view him as a top 10 guy, but I view him as a guy who, if you really want to spread the floor and really cause nightmares for teams, he's the guy. He's almost like Channing Frye. And that's a valuable guy. A guy who can step out and hit threes and unclog the paint and all that stuff. But I'd probably lean more to Miles Turner just because of defense and his ability to step out and hit jumpers. There is some concern with the way he runs. If you watch him when he runs really weird. He runs almost like he has hip problems, which he doesn't. But you watch him run, it's very how do I put it? It's almost like he's dragging his legs, but not obviously not really, because that'd be weird to see a guy doing that. But I like him a lot. I actually think he could pass Jahlil Okafor on my draft board soon.
All right, so we're looking at, with that scenario you mentioned, Miles Turner. That'd be a scenario where, listen, you have McLemore. He's pretty good on defense. I think that's an underrated part of the game, and it's improving. You have Cousins.
Great.
His defense is improving. You'll have Chris Middleton, his defense, and you'll have Miles Turner, who you mentioned he can play defense. for a team that's been bad this year on defense, that's a big upgrade for them.
Yeah, I think people are starting to realize defense matters again. Like, we went through, like, that offensive surge where, like, teams just wanted to score a ton of points, and defense was cool, but whatever. And, there's teams who still play, like San Antonio still plays it. They've always played it. Memphis obviously plays it. Atlanta plays it. All these, Golden State is literally the epitome of the team that shouldn't play great defense but does. Like, because you look at this team, they run up and down 100 possessions a game, and, they're chucking threes, and they're lighting up everybody with offensive efficiency. They're like number 2 in the league. Like, they're number 1 in pace, number 2 in offensive efficiency, and number 1 in defensive efficiency. Like, that's really ridiculous. Like, no team should be able to do that. And Sacramento could do that. Like, but they could do it in a reverse way, where it's like you kick the ball down to Cousins, but Cousins could pass out of double teams down to Turner or Middleton or McLemore or even Collison, who can hit the stand-up or hit the spot-up threes. I mean, it's all about asset acquiring. Like, that's the one thing that the NBA has kind of not, like, that's the untold secret now. It's like, that's why people get on Philadelphia's case. Like, oh, why do they keep, acquiring all these picks? Because you want to get assets. Every little asset matters. Like, that's how Houston got James Harden. Like, it matters. And I think that's what Sacramento has to get into. If they are able to move Rudy Gay for nothing, which they could do, and I actually think Boston could help them there, because they don't really have a small forward right now.
No, they don't have no small forward.
They're basically using Evan Turner to play the 3 and also handle the ball. So it's like, if you get Rudy Gay, he's obviously better than Evan Turner. Like, half the league is better than Evan Turner. So, I mean, but yeah, I think he could. Like, even if they don't get Chris Middleton, like, let's say they don't get Chris Middleton, right? Like, let's just say they move Rudy Gay, and they just clear cap space, right? If you move Rudy Gay and you just clear cap space, you can get Stanley Johnson. Like, in the draft, and great defensive small forward, improving offense, good jumper, not finishing well around the rim right now, but at the same time, I mean, he's 18 years old. He's got the body of a 28-year-old. I mean, like, if you actually look at Stanley Johnson, like, holy crap, that's LeBron. In terms of body, like, holy crap. Like, not like the same physically ripped LeBron we see now, but like the LeBron that came out. It's pretty crazy. Like, he's like 6'7", 6'8", 240. And he's I mean, that's a big dude for a small forward. Wow. So, yeah.
So we're going to label this part of the podcast that you called him the next LeBron.
No, I didn't call him the next.
Just for the rating.
No, God, I haven't even done draft comps yet for some guys, and Stanley Johnson's kind of like perplexing me, because you try to think of like who's a great defender who at the small forwards, but like who's a great defender that has good athleticism with a solid jumper and can somewhat finish around the rim, but is better in transition. It's like there's not many of those guys that you just start thinking of. Like, he'd be a pretty unique guy. Like, I guess in terms of like stature, it's almost like a Jeff Green, but obviously way better defensively.
Yeah. And so the one other scenario I want to throw, because I mean, we've talked about this, and the whole focus was about potentially trading DeMarcus Cousins. So let's say you trade him to Boston, or if you have another scenario, which please check so we can talk about a different trade scenario. Let's say you get Boston's pick this year, 2 future picks, including Brooklyn's and Dallas's. So you're looking at maybe 2 top 10 picks this year. What direction do you go there, or is there another trade area where you would look with DeMarcus Cousins?
If it's Boston, which that's the thing, like he's been so linked to Boston, and part of that is Bill Simmons, just because Bill Simmons, like no one moves the blogosphere and Twitter more than Bill Simmons. Like Woj comes close, but Simmons is the guy, like because people listen to him for basketball gospel,
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, every year it's copy-paste DeMarcus Cousins to the Boston Celtics room.
Right, like it's nonstop, and it's like if it's Boston, like what's Boston have now? 11? Yeah, Boston has 11. So it's like Sacramento 6. You get Miles Turner at 11. Uh, if he's there, Porzingis. If he is there, Porzingis. Like, Cauley Stein and Porzingis could work, too. Um, I love Porzingis. Like, he should be higher on my board, but I have problems with his defense. And he really only has, like, one post move. He has, like, a post fadeaway. But it's like, Porzingis is, man, that's... Like, it seems so, like, assholish to say next Dirk. Because every big man from Europe who shoots, like, who shoots, like, every international guy who's, like, 6'10" and can shoot, no, that's the next Dirk. Like, Gian Leon, remember him? Next Dirk right there. That guy's a baller, man. Like, hey, man, I bought into Gian Leon's stock as well, so I'm not alone on that. That's another draft blunder I had. But Porzingis can do it. Lights it up. Good shooter. Great offensive talent. You can play them together. He's just got to come over. That's the big deal. He's got to come over. Like, a lot of these guys, you don't know if they're going to come over.
Yeah. And is there any other trade scenario outside of Boston you could see happening?
Denver, just because of George Karl. Like, because, he loves Ty Lawson, all this stuff. It's really funny because if Brian Shaw had made it to the offseason and was given another year, I feel like they would have traded. I feel like Ty Lawson and, like, Cousins and other pieces would have swapped because Shaw would have got his triangle offense big man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it would have been like, oh, we got our big now. Like, we can run the triangle offense and run the offense I want. And George Karl could have just had Ty Lawson run the space and pace, and we're just gonna get to the rim and we're only gonna shoot threes. You know, I mean, I don't know what else they can get from Denver. It's tough because they already hit, like, Sacramento already has two guards, but I would ask for Gary Harris at least, just because I really like Gary Harris. Like, I guess that's all the only way I can put it. Like, I really liked Gary Harris. I thought he was one of the only guys in the draft who was a two-way player. Like, Wiggins was the only other guy, I believe, on my board who was like this guy's a two-way player. Gary Harris was a two-way player. He could shoot. He could somewhat handle. He had some combo guard ability, but he could lock people down. And I think you need that. Like, you need two-way guys.
Yeah.
Like, it's funny because part of me is like, just ask for everything. Like, ask for Yusuf Nurkic, ask for all these guys. And it's like, but, like, I think they like Nurkic too much. You know, like, but man, Fareed and Cousins next to each other would be so bad defensively. They would clean up the glass like no one else, but they would be bad defensively.
Yeah. Although for some, they consider rebounds to be part of defense.
Yeah, let's not get into that. Because that's my head coach saying dumb shit.
Yeah. Wow, I forgot.
For those who don't know, I'll just say it for anyone who doesn't know and didn't see. For anyone who doesn't know, Doc Rivers yesterday bashed a piece by Tom Haberstroh that basically said that DeMarcus Cousins isn't the defensive player of the year. To pimp myself out for a second, I wrote an article about
Jordan.
What did I say? DeMarcus Cousins?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, we've been talking about Cousins for so long. To pimp myself for a little bit, I wrote an article about I almost said it again, about DeAndre Jordan not being the defensive player of the year. I wrote it before Tom Haberstroh, and I got killed for it. I took so much vitriol on Twitter for it because you can't use rim protection metrics, like they don't account for the fact that like so-and-so let in dribble penetration from a guard. It's like, yeah, but also watch the games. Like, I know DeAndre Jordan is a good rim protector. Is he a great one? No. He's not Rudy Gobert. He's not Andrew Bogut. He's not, oh, God, the guy just slipped my name. He's not Derek Favors. No, he's not these guys who are, like, half of rim protection is just scaring the living shit out of people from shooting. Like, what was it? The other night, Rudy Gobert scared the crap out of, oh, God, who'd they play?
Everyone. He scares the crap out of everyone.
What was it? There was the GIF I posted tonight about how he blew up an entire defensive possession by himself just because he's long and rotated really well. Like, that was Rudy Gobert. But it was like there was a possession the other night where someone went for someone turned the corner on a layup, right, around the around the left elbow next to the free throw line, comes around, goes like this to throw the layup, and here comes Rudy Gobert like this, and the shot just never made it. Just like the guy didn't even put his full weight. It was like, oh shit, Rudy Gobert, and it was like, that's what he is. I mean, DeAndre Jordan's not the defensive player of the year, but Doc Rivers, getting back onto the point, Doc Rivers said that he pulled off a Mark Jackson quote, which was, rebounding is the #1 aspect of defense because it ends possessions. That's like saying that assists are the #1 thing on offense just because you pass to a guy who scored. Like, it totally negates what happened before that. Like, for instance, okay, if you rebound, like, what is it? DeAndre Jordan leads the NBA this year in uncontested rebounds, okay? Like, there's nobody within 3.5 feet of the rebound but him more times than any other player in the NBA. So when you think about it, and to put it with the assist thing, it's like if I were to give you the ball with the shot clock winding down 25 feet away from the basket, and there's 2 seconds on the clock, and I passed out of the post, and there's a guy in your face, you need to throw up a prayer from 25 feet and it goes in, do I really deserve an assist for that? Is that great offense? No, it's not. It's terrible offense. It just happened to work. Like, defense is much more than just who gets the rebound. It's everything. Because, like, Draymond Green, who's my defensive player of the year, he only averages, like, 8 rebounds a game. I say only. Like, that's not bad. But, like, he averages 8 rebounds a game. DeAndre averages, like, 14.5 or something stupid now. So it's like he's averaging, like, let's say he's averaging 6 rebounds less per game. Does that make him any less of a defender? No. It makes him actually better of a defender because he has other guys who can do it for him. And it's kind of weird. Like, this notion is like it's like the 1990s of baseball again, where sabermetrics got introduced and everyone hated it because it went against everything they believed. Like their childhood crush just got shown to not be as great as she is.
Well, I mean, with the rebound thing, you meant because Doc Rivers thinks it means the end of the possession. That would mean DeMarcus Cousins' 24 rebounds on Friday night against Philadelphia was an otherworldly defensive performance, which I can tell you, having watching that game, there wasn't a lot of defense that game.
Let's put it in basic context right now. If rebounds were the only thing that mattered for defense, and it was just defensive rebounds, and that's all we counted, Kevin Love would be a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year. He led the NBA 2 years in defensive rebounds per game. If that was the only criteria, Kevin Love would be a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, and that's full of shit. Because Kevin Love is not a good defender at all. Like, not even an average defender. So let's be real. Like, this notion that, like, I'm basically being the anti-Barkley right now. Like, this notion that analytics are this big, bad, scary wolf in the room that's going to blow your house down is full of crap. Like, you can't just use analytics and you can't just use the eye test. You use them both together. It's not an either-or argument. It's both. And that's what I think Barkley and some people are afraid of. Like, the old-timers just don't want to see, like, progression. Like, because, you know, maybe if there was analytics involved, Charles Barkley would not be the worst three-point shooter of all time. Someone would have told him to stop shooting. Like, it's little shit, you know? It's actually maddening. Like, I'm getting a little bit annoyed just because, like, anytime you see the argument come up, like, this so-and-so metric doesn't matter because, you know, science can be wrong. Like, I love analytics, okay? You know I love analytics. You and I talk about it all the time. The real plus-minus stat is one of the worst stats in basketball, and it's an analytic, and I hate it, okay? There's no way on God's green earth that Robert Sacre is a better defensive center than DeAndre Jordan, all right? There's no way that, that Chris Paul's like the 16th best defensive point guard in the NBA. Let's be real here. Like, last year, Hedo Turkoglu rated out in defensive plus-minus among small forwards. Hedo Turkoglu, who's 804 years old, okay, graded out as better than LeBron James and Kevin Durant. If anyone believes that, there's a plot of land where you should go live by yourself and communicate with nobody. Like, that is not possible. Like, but in the metrics defense, it's still new. Like, they got to work kinks out. There's going to be things that get worked out. It's not an either-or. It's both. And I think people are... It's like the sabermetrics thing in baseball where it's like each side is dug in their heels so much that the other side thinks they won't budge. But there's that large gray area where people like myself are, who look at analytics and look at the games, and you know, you gotta come up with conclusions based on both.
Yeah, I mean, with the plus minus thing, and because that's something on last NBA podcast we talked about it a lot. So if you're a believer into plus minus, first of all, go back and watch the podcast. Second of all, if you get a call from IRS saying that they're going to arrest you, you're probably going to believe it too.
Oh, that is funny you mentioned that. Did I tell you about? Okay, did I tell you what happened?
Oh no.
Okay, this is a little bit of personal information, so I'm sorry if I'm not releasing names or anything. Okay. This goes in hand with the IRS thing. My mom got a call yesterday from this, and it went on the voicemail on the answer machine at the house. Yes, people, I still live at home. I'm one of Charles Barkley's nerds, okay? I live at home with my mother. There's reasons why. Anyway, she gets a call, and it's from the IRS, right, who are going to audit her and take her to federal court over fraud and some shit, right? So I call my mom and tell her, you know what she tells me? Because I'm laughing. You know what she tells me? She goes, the IRS doesn't call you. She goes, they never call anybody. They mail you shit.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, it's like, it's kind of like, come on. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I think we got the same phone call because I'm in the exact same situation. Like right now, I live with my parents. But I mean, they called just a few nights ago, or a few days ago, and they were like, listen, you're facing a lawsuit, and if you don't answer or something like that, we're gonna send police to your house. I'm sorry, I'm not buying that.
Right? Please send the police. I would love to talk to them. Like, I would love to hear how the reaction to that is.
Is that the police coming to your house right now?
It actually is. Good call. That is. They are coming to arrest me right through my back window. Man.
Well, I think this is a great way to end it. We're gonna see. My good
one last thing before we go. I have to do my due diligence here because I have to rant about something every time I'm on a podcast. Like that's one of my good things I have to do. Like I have to. Like you've seen me. And a lot of times I rant about hating on things, like hating on teams and stuff. I'm not going to do that tonight. I'm going to rant on something I love. I know. I just blew your mind. I love the Utah Jazz. I love Rudy Gobert. I love Quinn Snyder. I love Dante Exum. I love Gordon Hayward now. I love Derek Favors. Even Joe Ingles. I'm warming up to him. He's one of my weird cases. He's almost like it's kind of funny. Utah takes the guys I actually don't care. Like Alec Burks I didn't like and he's turned it around. Trey Burke I didn't like last year and he's turned it around. So it's kind of funny. But on the grand scheme of things, I want to say Utah needs to, and we've talked about him, Utah needs to max out Chris Middleton. He's the team that should go after them, or they're the team that should go after him. Because if you put Middleton at the 2-guard next to Exum and let Exum grow this offseason, and so you have Exum, Middleton, Hayward, Favors, Gobert, right? Defensively, you're not getting better than that. And the offense will come when it comes because they're all young guys. That team is so young. Like they are the Phoenix Suns before the Suns outthought themselves. And it's very interesting because this could be a 40 to 45 win team next year, depending on schedule. Schedule matters. Like that's the one thing in the NBA. Like schedule really does matter. Schedule helps a lot of teams. And going to Utah is not an easy game now. Their defense since the All-Star break is number 1 in the NBA. Not for points allowed, but for defensive efficiency. Like, if I had a vote for Defensive Player of the Year...
Gobert.
No. I love Gobert. He'd be my top 5. I think my top 4 would be Draymond, Ibaka, Duncan, and then Gobert. Gobert, when I did the Defensive Player of the Year article and I mentioned Draymond Green as my front runner, I used the sentence Draymond is disruption. Gobert is insanity. He is so unfair. Like no one 7'2" should move like him. The way he alters shots, the way he rebounds, like he doesn't rebound like a 7'2" guy. He rebounds like a guy who knows what he's doing. He's always in the right place offensively. He sends good screens. He disrupts pick and rolls by just going like this. Think of how unreal that is. You're running the pick and roll, the guy hedges you like this, and it's like a 7'6" wingspan. You're not going anywhere. Like, I love Gobert. I love Utah. I wish them nothing but the best. I'm glad the Clippers don't have to play them the rest of the year. I'm 100% glad because I'd be terrified. I wish them nothing but the best, and I think Gobert should make one of the defensive teams. I think he should make second team all defense, maybe first team.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's one of those things where I do love Sacramento Kings. Obviously, they're my hometown team. I love them. But, if I were to pick up the second team, just for fun because I want to experience wins or winning or even 500 basketball, I think I'm going to go with the Utah Jazz.
Yeah, they're an interesting case study in building the right way with a young coach. Same thing with Boston. Like, just get young guys who compete hard. Like, it's not hard to find these guys. Like, when you go into the draft, just look for the one guy who hates to lose and, like, actually tries. Like, Rudy Gobert, when he runs from the one end of the court to the other end of the court, from defense to offense or reverse or vice versa, he does not run like he's 7'2". Like, I cannot stress that enough about how important that is, that you don't look your height when you're running. He doesn't lumber, and he's smart, man. Tonight, I've mentioned I have the GIF of him blowing up an entire defensive possession by Detroit. Like, Detroit ran a 1-5 pick and roll, and all Gobert did to stifle the pick and roll was he shifted right, went like this, went like that to raise his arm to stop any potential jumper, right? They wheeled the ball around. Gobert rotated back in a position in the post to defend his guy. Got back out. They ran another side pick and roll with 5 seconds on the shot clock. Gobert went like this and trapped him, and then deflected the pass on the roll, and they got a shot clock violation. He's insane. Like, you don't see bigs do that. And their length on defense is game changing. Exum is long. Hayward's long for what he is, and Favors is long. Like, I tweeted out the stat. They played 12 games since the All-Star break. I think they're 10-2.
You think so? I can double check that.
Okay, they're 10-2. Let's just say they're 10-2. Either way, in the 12 games since the All-Star break, they've held 10 of the 12 opponents to under 90 points. They're stifling teams. It is not fun right now to play them. It is not fun. And meanwhile, Detroit's going in the opposite direction. They're like 1-10 since acquiring Reggie Jackson, or since he's played or something, because Reggie Jackson hates offense.
It's been like the anti-Josh Smith release. It's just all gone reverse now.
They released the forward version of Josh Smith and got the combo guard. It's like they put him into the chamber where the fly came out of. That's like now they have the guard version of him.
And just one more thing on the Utah Jazz. I haven't gone to a Kings game this year, but I think April 5th, it's the Sunday, I think I'm going to have to see the Utah Jazz at Sacramento.
Did you say they're playing Utah?
Yeah, Utah at Sacramento Sunday, April 5th. I'm going to have to go to that game.
If I were you, I would go.
Yeah.
I feel like it'd be fun just to look at, what was it? I went to go see Minnesota. And that was fun. I mean, it was Ralph Lawler night, but it was fun. Because you get to see young guys. I like seeing the younger guys play, like, more than the older guys. Like, I saw Westbrook on the opening night of the year for the Clippers, and granted he got hurt, but it was great to see him. But I like seeing the young guys, like the hungry guys. The guys who, like, nothing's given to them, so they're pissed that they want to take everything.
Absolutely.
Speaking of that, the age limit needs to be abolished. They need to get rid of that. Go back to the 18, let them out of high school.
Absolutely. I think we'll end the night there. I mean, I think because we did this podcast spur of the moment, I think this is the third time we've set another podcast length record, so it's just fun talking basketball with you, my friend. This
is why you can't talk to me. I never shut up.
And real quickly before we go, where can people follow you on Twitter?
Fly by Night, FLYBYKNITE. You can also, if you go there, you'll find the links to where I write. So, excellent. And I will warn people I don't shut up on Twitter. If there's a sporting event on, I will be tweeting about it. I don't sleep.
I think people have learned you don't shut up by watching the podcast.
Yeah, that's a big problem I have, but at the same time, I'm not going to apologize for it because I'd rather be opinionated and outspoken than just not have anything to say.
Absolutely. And like I said, have a lot of fun. And we will have the links to articles up on this podcast probably tomorrow. So thank you so much for coming on.
No problem. And the one thing I will say to people is never be afraid to be wrong. I would gladly be wrong about everything I've ever said rather than be proven right about everything. Because if a lot of the guys that didn't turn out well, like for instance, like if I say someone, Jaleel Okafor is going to be terrible, okay, like let's just say I say that, and he turns out to be great, I would actually be legitimately more happy that he turned out to be great and that I was wrong than if he turned out to be crappy. Like, I want to see everyone succeed. I don't like seeing guys fail because failure sucks, and we all know what failure's like.
Absolutely. And everyone, thank you for listening to the Very Good Sports Podcast.